We're digging deep down in the weeds, man, scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks and whatever potential trades they can make. Today I wanted to revisit the Casey Mittelstadt conversation, because while it's true that the Boston Bruins center has probably the most intriguing profile and story in my opinion, like, I'm always going to think about Casey Mittelstadt and how he was labeled as the best prospect in the NHL over Elias Pettersson 7 years ago. That's kind of my mind's eye whenever I think about this guy. Even though there is such a funny story attached to Mittelstadt's name, that doesn't change the idea that he could be seen as a potential Vancouver Canucks target. As talked about by Cam Robinson on Sakaris and Price earlier last week, he wouldn't be surprised if the Canucks have already called about Casey Mittelstadt and potentially Pavel Zacha from the Boston Bruins. But Mittelstadt, 26 years old, 6'1", 196, signed on till the end of 2027, is making $5.75 million a year. And this previous year, he had 40 points in, 18 plus 63, so 83 minus 2, 81 games. Not particularly amazing, but not terrible. 40 points is kind of in the middle of the pack there. Sure, he has had more productive years in his past. That 57-point campaign that he had in 80 games split between Colorado and Buffalo in 23-24 comes to mind. But Casey Mittelstadt is in a pretty interesting spot where it was already reported that the Boston Bruins only really acquired this guy because they wanted the prospect and the draft pick that came with him, not necessarily because they wanted Mittelstadt himself. So now, when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, a team that is looking for a second-line center to play behind Elias Pettersson, a team that could potentially use the services of a Mittelstadt or a Zacha behind EP, I wanted to get into some hypothetical trade packages, because when it comes to the folks on CanucksFanForum.com, they went out there and had a whole thread talking about Casey Mittelstadt and whether or not a trade with the Boston Bruins could be coming. Now, this is like, as I said, this is like bottom of the barrel stuff. We are literally looking at Canucks fan hypothetical trade packages and diving into what folks are talking about in order to get this conversation going. But then again, I think this is, in a way, more genuine, right? We're talking about literal fans here that are responding with their own thoughts and ideas, and we can make our own videos that create more discussion and that react to these things. So that's what I wanted to do over here. Casey Mittelstadt, could he be a Vancouver Canuck? What do you think the cost would be? I just wanted to dive into what some of the Canucks fan forum people are going out there and talking about. They discuss a lot about what Mittelstadt's role would be in Vancouver and how he would technically dethrone, quote-unquote, current Vancouver Canucks second-line center Filip Chytil. There's a conversation about Chytil and folks saying that they hope that Chytil will be able to stay fully healthy. It's a long shot, but one can hope. On the flip side, he gets injured again, and he is likely an LTIR replacement, which means the Vancouver Canucks would then have some space to afford a 2C without it having to attach any sweeteners to clear cap space as part of the trade deal depending on whom they get. Chytil currently has very little value league-wide. Next season is his opportunity to prove he can remain in the league, and the Canucks should give him that. If no move is made to procure a 2C, then they can afford him top 6 minutes, maybe pad his stats, and up his trade value as best as it can be achieved. So, there is a lot of Filip Chytil defending going on over here. Like, yes, he had himself a very discombobulated past few years with games played, missed, and a bunch of injuries and concussions in there. But lo and behold, when Chytil was in the Vancouver lineup, but Filip Chytil did provide a lot of speed, he provided energy, he provided hard forechecking. The question is whether or not that is enough to mitigate the need for a guy like Casey Mittelstadt, for example. A lot of folks are going out there and saying, yeah, glad to see this take, glad to see people still talking positively about Filip Chytil. However, as it pertains to a Casey Mittelstadt trade, there are still folks going out there and saying, okay, if Chytil is the better player between him and Mittelstadt when healthy, that's just the healthy part. At least Mittelstadt has been mostly healthy. The flip side is Chytil could be used for LTI if he does go out long term. Can the Canucks use both? Should they use both? The question that this user had is if they move him, that clears cap. Does flipping Chytil help us? I don't see a lot of players hurting us with their cap hit that we'd want to move just for that reason and would want to replace with Mittelstadt. Would Boston retain prospects and or draft picks? It would be really good to shore up the middle six even if Chytil stays healthy. Maybe one or the other. We'll see. You then had a response from Francesco Aquilini, whom I don't believe is the real Francesco Aquilini, but bear with me here. Honestly, I'd rather move Hoglander instead of Chytil in a trade for Mittelstadt. Chytil is a question mark health-wise, but I'm interested in his speed and seeing what he could do over a lengthier stretch under someone not named Tocchet. Hoglander is a third liner. If it turns out that Chytil is only a third liner too, at least the Canucks are faster for it. He's got some skill too. If nothing else, he could probably be a solid third line winger. And then you dive into the question as to whether or not a guy like Nils Hoglander is even worth considering in a trade. Another response says, I don't know why, but I think Hoglander is going to have a solid year. You don't score 20 goals and then forget how to do it. But then the following response says it's not that he forgot how, it's that Hoglander's career season was built on the back of an unsustainable shooting percentage that was quite a bit higher than his career average. He shot at 20% in that season. His average is 12. Realistically, he is what he has shown the Canucks fan base to be thus far. A third-line winger who plays with heart and who is capable of complementary offense, just not top 6 level offense. Nils Hoglander, in the best season of his NHL career, ended up scoring 24 goals and 36 total points. He was on a 5v5 goal-scoring bender. The guy was absolutely outrageous in terms of the amounts of goals that he would find just being in the right areas and just getting the puck bounced over to him. 24 goals is hard to fluke out, but the guy ended up doing that and only scoring 8 goals, the very next season. So, my question to you here is, if Casey Mittelstadt is a Vancouver Canucks trade target, who are you more prone to trading if you are Patrick Allvin? Hoglander in a deal for Mittelstadt, or Filip Chytil in a deal for Mittelstadt? Chytil would make sense because it's like, okay, you're trading away one guy for the other. Also, Chytil almost got traded for Josh Norris, so we know the Vancouver Canucks are kind of in the mix of potentially making that sort of a move here. Mittelstadt, is he really that big of an upgrade over a guy like Chytil? At the very least, Mittelstadt plays games. Chytil gets hurt far too often to be fully confident in his services. Also, these guys are the same age. They were both drafted in 2017. Meanwhile, Nils Hoglander, a little bit younger than both of these guys, is more of a depth-scoring winger who can provide some 5v5 offense and some snarl if you need him to. The question is, who would you rather have? Chytil and Hoglander? Or is that the right way to go? Mittelstadt and Hoglander? Or Mittelstadt and Chytil all down the middle? Or would you try to make a deal go through without using any of Filip Chytil or Nils Hoglander's name in the conversation? There are a bunch of ways that we could go out there and talk about this Casey Mittelstadt trade discussion, but I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Who do you think is the appropriate trade package return in a Mittelstadt deal? Hoglander or Filip Chytil? Who would you rather get rid of? Who would you rather keep around? Let me know in the comment section all your opinions. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.